So today we will talk about governing AI in Africa, and we would like to know how our different institution governance one as well as non-state actors are trying to shape this governance and how, for example, we try to support the development of AI using just different policies and strategies. Uh, the focus will be more on how the implementation of the different policies are going currently. If, for example, there's implementation are well aligned with exactly what the different communities are expecting or are trying to do. And on another note, if, for example, this uh, implementation uh, is driven by the different communities. So we'll hear from our different panelists and we'll try to see how they perceive this implementation or these different AI policies. Before that, I would like maybe to share the fact that Africa is projected to be home to 1 in 5 of the world's consumers of AI and close to 40% of the world population by 2100. This is from a study, a landscape study conducted by the Global Center on AI Governance last year. Why I want to start from here is to show how Africa will be concerned by the development of this AI as a consumer. And if we see these numbers, for us, it should be like, hey, you African, you need to do something because you will be the one who will consume more the AI. So are you ready to do so in an effective way and in a way that we want, for example, uh, have to be like more dependent on others? We will not be, for example, more like just followers regarding to this AI development or AI transformation of our different contexts. When I try to see if, for example, African people in African countries have started to think about how they frame, they can structure, they shape their different policies, I start like thinking or just looking whether, for example, we do already have some policies. And since AI is well related to digital transformation, I've started to see or to look on digital policies or digital transformation policies. So what we can see from some studies and some tracker is that African countries are producing more and more, and I would say thousands of policies. That's the first thing I would like to bring on the table, that we don't sit just behind and waiting for others to do so. We are doing it in the digital ecosystem. And then after, I try to see if, for example, there are some specific policies that are related to AI. Yes, we do have so. We have more than 100 policies today related to AI development. How, for example, we want to develop the AI in Africa. What are the key sectors we want, for example, to focus? How we want to make sure that we are using responsible AI, that, for example, data that we need are here. The different resource may be also required to do our different AI tools are also well in place. So what we can see is that policies are still here, or policies in AI are also defined. And when we try to see at the continental level how, for example, these policies are structured, we can see that the African Union has developed a couple of policies related to AI or to support the development of AI. And what is more interesting is beyond just defining the different aims, the different objective, and the different key sector, they want to see how the different pillars in terms of digital infrastructure, digital platform, digital skills, and as well as digital innovation are, for example, fully developed or are developing in a way that they will support the development of AI. So here we can see that at the continental level, we have a couple of policies related to the different policies, to the different pillars. I mean, digital infrastructure, digital platform, digital skills, and digital innovation. So the question is not if we are or we have these policies at the continental level. The question will be probably if there's different policies are well captured by the different countries and they are also just translated in such a way that the implementation will be effective. The question will be responded by our different panelists very, very soon. But before, I would like to make sure that everyone that are following us is how I can aware that the AU policy is something on which we can rely on as a country or as an institution of research, because this policy try to build the strategies in different categories, like maximizing AI benefits for the communities, building capabilities for AI, minimizing AI risk, African public and private, regional and international cooperation and partnership. So this means at the continental level, there is a very interesting building block on which different countries can rely on to develop their strategy. And this strategy usually rely also on some sector that I will call the pivotal sectors, like healthcare, finance, agriculture, education, manufacturing, and marketing, and so on. So again, we have our different policies. Again, these policies, of course, are very new because some of them have been developed like 2 years ago. The question now is whether we are implementing in a right way these different policies. The question is how our different communities, in terms of academy, in terms of private sector, in terms of other key actor roles, these implementation are aligned with their perception. The question is, are we sure that the strategy we define, the different strategies, will help us to get the goal of developing AI? And to respond to this different question, we'll hear from our different panelists. And that's why I will stop here and to let us, our different speakers, to share with us their take regarding to the AI governance policies in Africa and the implementation of this different strategy. So now allow me to start this discussion with one of our panelists. His name is Nicholas Ozor. He's a professor, as said before by Amy. And Nicholas, my first question will be, from your vantage point, what are the most significant development in national and continental AI strategy across Africa? And where do you see the most critical gaps emerging? So Nicholas, you have 5 minutes to reflect on this and to let our different participants hear your take. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Sarr, for that very good background that you have built for this webinar and this dialogue. I think you've provided a very good background showing the need for AI adoption on the continent, where 1 out of every 5 is a consumer of AI technology on the continent. And I would say that it is against this background that the African Union Commission found it important to develop in 2024, July, the AI Continental Strategy, which prioritized about 5 key areas in terms of using AI to improve African lives and private sector competitiveness in line with the Agenda 2063 that we know. They also prioritized using this AI in managing risks around governance, human rights, gender equality, safety, and cultural values. They prioritized AI to build the infrastructure, skills, data, and research capacity for that is required for AI development, for strengthening regional and international partnerships to grow Africa, and also in driving both public and private sector investment in AI, both at national and regional levels. As you know, and I think as you mentioned, also the areas in terms of sectors that they have prioritized are health, education, agriculture, public service delivery, climate change, media and culture, natural resource, justice and law, regional trade, and peace and security. So since the inception of this strategy in 2024, there have been early signs of progress which have emerged with also alongside with notable gaps. So if I would restrict myself for sake of time on the most significant areas of interest where significant AI developments have been made on the continent and also at the national levels, I would identify about 7 key areas where this development have occurred, both at continental and national levels. The first one is following the establishment of this strategy, the Africa AI Council was established. The second issue I'll talk about in terms of where significant impact has been made is in AI financing, especially by the private sector. The third one is on institutional and governance developments. I will talk about national AI strategy development, the AI infrastructure investments and other investments, as well as AI capacity building and training. So I will just take a bit of these key areas where I have found that the strategy has really made some significant strides in shaping the direction of action for the continent in terms of AI development and deployment on the continent. So like I said earlier, the council was established in November 2025 and is headed by the president or chaired by the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, comprising of 15 members from both governmental and independent experts. And this strategy prioritizes context-driven AI use cases that address Africa's 3 development needs with structured piloting and scaling across regions supported by private sector participation and digital infrastructure, capacity building, innovation hubs, youth skills development, and so on and so forth. So this is one significant area since the establishment of this strategy that we have seen progress. The second one is in the financing. As you know, AI requires a lot of finances for it to, both in the research and development, as well as in scaling. So the financing of AI in Africa is anchored in an ambitious plan to mobilize approximately about $60 billion for this project. And one notable development in this is the emergence of the multi-stakeholder funding initiatives to support infrastructure, capacity building, and research. For instance, the Partnership for Global Inclusivity on AI announced last year that it had mobilized over $100 million in commitments from major tech companies such as Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, IBM, OpenAI, and so on and so forth. These investments span infrastructure, deployment, training, research support, and so on and so forth. However, this amount is still very small, constituting about 0.04% of what Africa actually needs, which should be around $250 to $500 billion for a continent-wide kind of implementation. But at least progress has been made, and this amount has been committed. The second issue is on institutional and governance development. Institutionally, significant progress has been made in establishing coordination mechanisms to support AI governance across the continent. So through the AUDA NEPAD, which is the operational body, has developed mechanisms, what we call continental mechanism on AI governance. The development of digital readiness index to assess country preparedness, and the coordination of an AI technical working committee or group that brings together member states. So this has seriously helped in providing institutional frameworks at the continental level for supporting the strategy that was developed by Africa. I would not forget the effort of UNESCO in this area, because UNESCO committed a large sum of resources, including training over 15,000 civil servants, over 5,000 judicial officers, and 2,000 educators and students, underscoring the growing institutional investment need in AI governance. Other regional blocks are also following suit. But let me also move to the issue of domesticating this AI strategy. We know that at the national levels that many countries are running up to mirroring the continental strategy to also develop their own national strategies. We have seen countries like about 16 countries in Africa, let me not mention them, but led by mainly Rwanda, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt. They have all developed their AI national strategies. We talk about investment. We have seen collaboration between the global north and the global south in investment in building AI infrastructure. And I know there is not much time, but I'll end up around capacity building, which, like I said before, UNESCO has been doing a lot, not only in supporting the continent in developing the AI strategy, but also committing to support the implementation of aspects of this strategy through training and capacity building to ensure that there is digital literacy, that there is infrastructure, and that this new and emerging technology is adopted both at the continental, national, and also even in universities, institutions, to ensure that we are not left behind. Many other institutions, like the ATPS, for instance, my organization, we have been supporting in this capacity building effort. by supporting PhD programs and postdoctoral programs across the continent, giving scholarships to students to undertake aspects of studies around AI. So all these are part of this significant development since the inception of the continental AI strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Nicholas. I think you give us a very interesting insight of what is doing currently in terms of progress regarding to the implementation of the continental policies. And I would like to recall really the different progress that we made and that we got with the support of international partners, as you said, and as well as with the support of some local institution as yours. And I would like also to highlight the fact that gaps are still here, and you mentioned some of them in terms of finance, I mean investment uh, in infrastructure, capacity development, and also how we can domesticate the AI product or AI strategy. These are some of the points I would like to highlight, and we will come back to you. Now let's move to our next panelist, Mrs. Andrea Masizana from Botswana University. So, Prof. Andrea, building on that policy landscape, how are universities responding in practice, particularly in shaping AI research, curriculum, and institutional priorities? The floor is yours, Prof. Audrey.
Thank you very much, Prof. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I do believe that universities across Africa are not passively reacting to the evolving AI policy. If anything, they are actively shaping it as well. But we do know that Africa is not moving at one speed. And there's that some are behind, some are slow, but the diversity is reflected in how universities actually do prioritize the curriculum, the research, their contribution to regional and national strategies, and also the kind of partnerships that they have. When we're talking about curriculum, I do believe that there's no shortage of interest, and AI is one of the most sought after fields amongst especially the students nowadays. And across Africa, universities are actively redefining what AI ecosystems look like in context. But there's a major shift where universities are moving beyond simply replicating global technical models, but also trying as much as possible to become contextual in AI development. That means we have to include stronger focus on governance of AI, ethics, aligning with AI, and social impact. So AI is no longer treated purely as a technical discipline, but as an interdisciplinary field embedded within law, public policy, health, and social sciences. And therefore, the programs that you see on AI in universities do integrate all these AI ethics, regulatory frameworks, societal implications, and also, as a result, preparing graduates for not just being AI engineers, but as policymakers and regulators and critical thinkers as well. So you see AI now not only taught in faculties of science and computing and technology-based, but also taught across different faculties as well because of these aspects. In terms of research, I also see that universities are trying very hard to bring the agenda to local realities. Although the development of AI systems is designed, we can see that it's now designed for low bandwidth environments. They're also trying to include multilingual societies. And also you see that we're working in data scarce context. So in terms of this, the universities are really playing a crucial role in local knowledge production, trying to generate data sets, language models that reflect African context rather than relying solely on imported data infrastructures. This, therefore, will be reframing their priorities to position African institutions as contributors to the global AI equity and not just being participants. So the other thing about a contribution to national strategies is that universities are also increasingly acting as government actors and ecosystem hubs, trying to support governments in that regard. They do contribute to national and constitutional strategies. They provide expert inputs into regulatory frameworks. I can say this because we are developing an AI policy in Botswana, and University of Botswana is right in the middle of doing that. I think that is happening all over Africa. And we also convene multi-stakeholder collaborations because universities have got that role. So the role extends beyond just the teaching that we are used to and the research, but rather into shaping the broader AI ecosystem where we are linking governments, industry, and civil society. So I strongly believe that. And we can see this through partnerships as we see how universities are faring. South Africa has become the most institutional, mature AI ecosystem. And there are several universities from South Africa that are hosting AI programs, AI national hubs. Tshwane University, UCT, Pretoria, Witwatersrand. So really, it is becoming a leader. We're seeing African Institute of Data Science and Artificial Intelligence in UP, University of Pretoria. We see Center of Artificial Intelligence Research in UCT. We see University of Witwatersrand being a center for AI and health and so forth. And we see many others, University of Joburg, Witwatersrand, KwaZulu-Natal. All these universities are showing that South Africa is really leading in these collaborations that I'm talking about. But we also see across the continent, we see Nigeria also having partnerships with a University Innovation Pod, Unipod in Africa, having had set the first AI-based Unipod. We also see just last year, Jomo Kenyatta University in Kenya, JKUAT, launching an AI Center of Excellence. We also see a number of universities across the continent actually being strong in AI in various disciplines. So the universities are really trying. And over and above that, we also have Pan-African networks that are really helping research and partnering with universities. For instance, the Data Science Africa, which supports AI research training across 15 universities. We see AI Africa Consortium, collaborated by this university to advance AI across institutions in Africa, not just in South Africa. We also see Deep Learning Indaba also trying to, as a major community that is driving AI research talent across Africa. So university really, all in all, we can say it, African universities are positioning themselves as bridges between local relevance and global AI ecosystems. And they also contribute to the more inclusive, equitable, and context-aware AI development in Africa. But of course, there are some challenges. I believe I will be addressing the challenges that these universities are holding despite all these major reposition and positive progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Audrey, for this insight. And I would like to pick up some of the point you highlighted in terms of how university are contributing to the development and the shaping of the AI ecosystem, and the way they think about now how they teach AI, and beyond just doing engineering point or engineering contents, they know that exactly we have to go further because law, ethics, and economics, many other fields are required to make sure that this ecosystem is well shaped. And I also will also pick up the collaboration part, because of course we cannot do many things without having a strong collaboration between African universities, sometime also with some other partners from outside of the continent. And you mentioned the existence of some networks that are helping, that are supporting the development of the AI in Africa. And also, I would like to recall, or to take one point that for me is very interesting: the fact that universities are starting to become center of excellence in South Africa, as well as some other country like in Nigeria, where we have recently the Uniport related or totally dedicated to AI. So this is something that recall everyone the importance of having the university in this ecosystem, because we contribute as academia to the development of skills, the capacity building, also to shape the ecosystem, providing some insight for the policy elaboration, as well as supporting the overall action. Thank you again, Dr. Audrey, for these insights. So let's move to the next panelist, Prof. Chineye and Yadike. From a community perspective, how are AI technologies currently being encountered or experienced, and what opportunities or concerns are most visible on the ground? The floor is yours, Prof. Chineye.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be part of this dialogue. Okay, I'll be leveraging.
Hello, can you hear Prof. Chineye? Hello.
I think we lost her.
Looks like we lost her. So we will maybe move to the next panelist. So
I think she's
community-based system to ensure that digital innovation translates into real impact, especially for the women who are the core pepper farmers. So with that, from what we have done, we have been able to observe that AI is often recognized, is not often recognized by the users, but is increasingly being experienced through practical tools and services. For example, in the project, that's the AI for NYP initiative, farmers interact with the solar-powered edge devices that detect pepper disease in real time, that combine SMS-based advisory messages. Interestingly, most of these farmers do describe this, they do not describe this as artificial intelligence, especially those that are not in our loop. They simply see it as a tool that helps them know what is wrong with their crops. Another one there is these farmers, with the introduction of the disease detection system, we have seen these farmers, they have been able to relate with AI, especially when we co-designed, co-deployed with them. So they were able to actually relate with this. So the highlights in reality is that AI in many African community is experienced functionally rather than being a conceptual item. So, but however, we know that these are still limited and uneven. Before we deploy this system, most of the farmers leverage identification of these diseases based on virtual inspection, casework. That's what they were able to use to diagnose their diseases. But this often leads to misdiagnosis and the application of inappropriate agrochemicals, resulting in crop losses. But with the introduction of the disease detection system, farmers now are beginning to shift from just the guesswork to evidence-based decision making. Though adoption is not automatic, farmers often cross-check from observation AI recommendation with their experience and peer learning between each others before acting. So the importance of trust is also there, and is also very, very important. What again did we observe? In terms of opportunity, has AI been able to significantly improve production, especially agriculture? Yes, through early and accurate disease detection, climate resilience, where we combine the AI system with tools like irrigation and advisory systems. However, there are also some critical concerns like data exclusion. Many farmers are not represented in the data set. Before we developed this system, we collected over 13,000 data sets just from a community. There's still other communities we still need to, build up data on. Then I've thought about the trust and transparency. Farmers want to know why recommendation is made. And like I said earlier, they would like to compare to their experience and also through peer learning. Then there is the issue of digital divide. Not all farmers have access to smartphones. And that's why in our system, we're able to integrate the SMS advisory platform to be able to help those that don't have smartphones to be able to receive these messages, the recommendation, knowing what is happening in their farm, that the AI installed in the farm has received a text message that has been able to identify the status of the plant, identify a disease, and be able to send them a text message for them to know what they should do. So most importantly, we see a disconnect between technology design and lived realities. But this is what we address in our project using co-developing methods, thanks to ATPS, that taught us from the beginning the importance of responsible AI applications.
Thank you.
So from the community standpoint, I would say that opportunity is not just scaling AI, but ensuring it is co-created, that is responsible to how people actually live and work. Because if you don't include these people, yes, we have talked about our universities, teaching, we are solving problems with AI, but if we don't carry the end users, the community involved, particularly in agriculture, if you don't carry them along from the onset, you end up designing your system, beautiful AI system, but it will not be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Chineye. You highlight some interesting point regarding how we have to develop our AI products, including the end users. Otherwise, they want to see maybe the benefit. They want to maybe be the one who will help you to get your goals. So the co-creation and co-development methods that you were highlighting is something very interesting that we have also to make sure that everyone in Africa is using this method to have good and responsible AI. And thank you for this use case that you share with us, showing the experience that farmers have lived, and also mentioning the fact we need to make sure that trust and transparency are there when we are developing this kind of product or this kind of collaboration with people like end users and like farmers. And I also will take this one. The inclusion is not always there. So you highlight the fact some exclusion, some women were excluded because data set were not well representative. But this is something that we have to look and to make sure that they want to harms or they want to give some biases in our algorithm. And the digital divide, you're totally right, because solution need to be well aligned with what we have as infrastructure. Otherwise, they won't be very useful. They will be useless. Thank you again for your insight. And now let's move to the next panelist, Prof. Nizar Lashnev from Michigan State University. So, Prof. Nizar, from your perspective, what role should international and international partnerships play in supporting AI development and governance across these different levels? The floor is yours, Prof. Nizar.
Thank you, Professor Sir. And to frame it a little bit, based on what you presented and also what we heard from the other panelists, I don't think we have a shortage of initiatives. Also, we don't have a shortage of policies. You can see that a lot of countries, the African Union, and even institutions within the countries are developing their own ideas and their own policies. But I think where the big gap is the difference between what is being designed and what's really being implemented. So that's what is missing, and that's where partnerships can play a very important role. For example, if we want to be concrete, right, and we take some real examples, I think that partnerships can play three different roles in the way forward. The first thing is translating policy into implementation. And again, if a country tries to develop a policy, who would turn it into a working system? So that's the question that we should be asking. How can you make it into a very concrete, practical system that can be implemented? And if we want to take, for example, agriculture, I see that it's an important topic that keeps coming back in some of the discussions. And based on the data that you showed, I think it represents 20 to 25% of the some of the implementations. If you build a strategy around agriculture in a country, so some of the questions, the real practical questions that come in is who would build the data set? Who's going to curate the data? Where will it be stored? Who owns it? Who's going to develop the models? Are we going just to import existing models and try to apply it, which never works in many contexts? And also, who's going to train the engineers, the analysts, the technicians who are going to maintain the data centers? Who's going to deploy the tools to farmers? Where is that interaction between the theoreticians and people who develop the models and develop the tools, and researchers at universities? And who's going to talk directly to farmers and help them implement the actual tools? And ultimately, also is very important, who's going to maintain those systems? How can we maintain them and make sure that they are sustained in time, right? Short-term projects are never successful. And usually a lot of the issues that we see, that a lot of the implementation is driven by grants. A 2-3 year grant, and then everyone disappears and there is no sustainability in time. And that is a model that's not going to work. So that's where partnerships, say, obviously similar to what AAP is trying to do in the African Alliance Partnership here, is important because it can sustain a lot of these systems in time. And that requires coordination between, again, ministries, the regulators, the universities, research centers, private sector is very important, and definitely the communities, right? As was pointed out by the previous panelists, the communities who are going to actually use the technology are very important, not just as end users, but also as co-developers. So we need to involve communities from the beginning into the system. So in the practical terms, as that first objective, turning policy into practice, what partnerships can do is really build pilots, develop the systems, and also they can develop what the measured impact. How are we assessing the success of what we're doing? Otherwise, everything remains at the level of principle. We remain in research centers or in some ministry's office, and it's never turned into practice. So that's where partnerships are very important in this role. The second aspect is building real capacities, right? We talk a lot about capacity building, but to be specific in this context, when we talk about AI, is very different from what we have done previously in a lot of the capacity building projects. In this case, we really have to talk about the computing infrastructure when we talk about capacity, right? It's not just training engineers or training technicians and we'll be done with it. It's very important to train faculty and students, but we have to also invest in institutions. Computing infrastructure is very important. Access to high quality data is also becomes very important. And access to locally relevant information is important. So same logic, we cannot just import models that have been trained in Europe or trained in France and try to apply them directly, which I see it a lot as I work in many countries across the continent in Africa. Even in simple things like designing infrastructure or designing roads, we take models that have been trained in France and we try to apply them in the, and sorry, I'm going to pick on one country and give an example because that's where I work the most. We try to implement them in Abidjan or in Tunis or something, which the weather conditions and everything is completely different. So that divide is very critical to close that gap. And that's where, again, partnerships can play a big role because around the world, I don't think there is a single institution that can do all of that. They can have all the components like training faculty, the computational infrastructure, the high quality data, the governance capacity. We cannot find a single university or a single government agency that can take all of them. For example, in practice, universities might have access to strong talent. Other institutions, they have access to infrastructure. The private sector can be the one building the data centers or building the infrastructure. The government is the one that holds the critical data set, and it also can set some of the regulations as it was discussed. The problem again, which was already addressed, is it's more of we almost have everything, but they are disconnected. And partnerships can play a role in disconnecting all these systems to make sure that it's a complete system that can work. And the third thing is to ensure, which we already mentioned a little bit, ensuring that it's the contextual relevance, which is very critical. And it's a very high risk in AI deployment and development that we see right now. It's just we take models and we just, which are technically sound, there's no problem, but we apply them directly and we try force them into a certain context. And that leads to very poor adoption of these models because they don't work. They're not going to be helpful. That's where co-development and also the collection, it has to start at the data level, like collection of data, understanding the local context, working together to leading to a development of a model. That's where, again, strong partnerships can come into importance. And initiatives like the one we're discussing right now become very important, right? As I said, AAP is one of the strong partnerships on the continent. And the reason for that is that it's a long-term engagement. It's not a one-off project. And that is very important. When we think about partnerships, we have to stop thinking about them as collaboration, but more as a implementation mechanism. I know it's not the right word that is typically used, but that's how I see them in AI. As those partnerships should be thought as the implementation system or the implementation mechanism. And to sustain them, they cannot be one-off projects. They cannot be dependent on single grants. And there has to be shared ownership of objectives and goals. That's very important. And also the agenda is the joint setting of the agenda so that the objectives are very similar, are the same, and the outcomes will benefit everyone. And that's again where these type of partnerships can play a big role. If they are transactional, they're not going to build systems. So they have to be real, structural, long-term collaborations. And that's where we see these type of collaborations are being very important in this context.
Thank you, Prof. Nijar. That's very interesting, and the way you highlight the interesting partnerships that we are having, like the AI AAP, and that will be allow us to translate from policy to implementation is very outstanding because you show how, for example, this will help us to have some real capacities that we need in terms of developing our different AI solution. And when you were talking about real capacity, you were mentioning infrastructure. It's not just training, it's like having high quality data, having also governance capacity. So it's interesting for us to recall or just to remind ourselves that partnership will be one of the key support we need. Otherwise, we want to go further. And as an African idea, alone you can go fast, but together we can go very far. And you will explain us with a couple of use cases, a couple of examples like the one in agriculture, how, for example, we should rely on this partnership to make sure that we have the resource, the required one to get exactly the contextual relevance of our different AI products. Thank you again for your input. Now we'll go in a second round, but this time I would invite my different panelists to be more shorter because we are behind time. So please try to wrap up your answer in 2 to 3 minutes. So we will allow enough time to our different participants and to hear from them. So now, Prof. Nicholas, I'm coming back to you to ask what would it take for African countries not only to adopt AI responsibly, but to shape global AI governance agenda in ways that reflect African priorities. The floor is yours. Prof. Nicholas.
Thank you again, Prof, for this other question. I will be brief. One, for Africa to shape global AI governance, the summary is that we must take responsibility. And different actors and stakeholders must take this responsibility. And that may be the best way. I would like to discuss the issue of taking responsibility. Let me start with the African governments. We must sequence implementation realistically. So if we say we want to adopt AI, we must provide the necessary prerequisites in our different countries for AI to thrive. There are other prerequisites in terms of infrastructure, such as electricity, connectivity, digital literacy, which need to be up and running for AI to thrive. The focus should shift from just strategy or strategy development to actual delivery of what is contained in this strategy through development of training and capacity building. And Nazer had also talked about capacity, not just about human capacity, but also material capacity in terms of infrastructure. The funding has to be sustainable, and like research grants, they have to be sustainable in the sense that projects have to, AI need a long-term resource, and therefore we need to extend that resource that way. The second actor I want to talk about is the continental institutions, such as the AU, our NEPAD, the regional economic blocks. They also have a role to play in the sense that they need to provide a kind of regional voice. In the future, for instance, we are developing the current UNESCO 8th edition UNESCO Science Report. And one of the chapters I'm writing on is about the future scenarios of science, technology, and innovation. And we know that in the future, we are going to have regional blocks. If Africa is to negotiate at the global arena, we need to form one common voice to be able to negotiate meaningfully. So that's our continental representatives need to bear this in mind and come up with one voice to accommodate the 55 African countries and our voice and what our priorities should be. The other aspect I want to talk about is international partners, including development finance institutions, private sector, technology companies, the private bilateral donors. The kind of support they need to provide are very important, especially in terms of financing, because partnerships, like Nazer said, must prioritize knowledge and skills transfer over just developing platforms, and the kind of support should spiral over longer periods. The AI4D funding that we've gotten from a group of consortium of donors led by the IDRC has really helped some of our institutions to strengthen AI capacity. Funding up to 5 years and beyond to 10 years, that should be important. Then most importantly and finally is the other critical actor in the AI ecosystem, which are the researchers and academic institutions. We should direct our work towards the impacts of this AI, especially targeting informal economy, targeting data sovereignty, targeting gender disaggregated analysis, and sector-specific studies, especially in the area of agriculture, health, education, which are key priority areas for Africa. Methodological approaches suited to African realities are needed, including mobile-first data collection, community-based participatory approaches, digital trace data analysis, mission-led science, and adaptive evaluation designs that do not simply import global North frameworks. So we need to, like I said, negotiate communally, and African universities particularly, and research institutions should deliberately produce and publish their works in internationally recognized journal outlets, because the absence of some of our work in this global discourse may mean that our perspective and context-driven approaches may not be recognized in the global framework. But with this, we can actually present our views in the global knowledge economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Nicholas. Stakeholders have to take their responsibilities. This is something that resonates very well, and we need to do so. Otherwise, sustainability won't be here, and it's something that was mentioned also by Prof. Nizar. I think that was very, very, very interesting also. So let's move to the next panelist, Prof. Andrea Masizana. Where do you encounter the most significant constraint in building meaningful AI capacity, whether in infrastructure, data systems, or human capital, and how do these reflect broader policy gaps? Prof. Andrea.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it being the second round, most of the points that I put together really have already been covered. So what I really believe is that Africa's AI ecosystem is growing, but of course the progress is constrained by structural gaps, but not necessarily a lack of talent. We have weak data systems. We have limited compute infrastructure that has already been addressed. We have fragmented institutional involvement and unsustainable funding models. I think that could really summarize. And the only thing that I probably would just say is that with fragmented data systems, the absence of coordinated strategies. I don't know if people are having the same problems that we are having, where you have data protection fighting with accessibility to data, and those policies creating some tensions in our countries. We also have problems where there's scarcity in high quality labeled African data sets. So again, that was addressed, that we are performing, the models that are done outside are performing poorly locally because they're not contextual. I think there was a mention of compute infrastructure. I also agree. I also have to add that cloud services that are used in terms of access to high performance computing infrastructure is very expensive and usually in foreign currency. That really is also a problem. And of course, our infrastructure in general, the basic infrastructure, such as electricity, connectivity. The other thing is governments are not treating compute as part of public investment. They are treated as private or donor resources, which is very sad because that has to be part of the national budget as well, so that universities could actually have more access. Institutional fragmentation was also mentioned, where universities are in isolations, but we need to create industry, government, co-creation platforms so that AI initiatives are advanced. We also have a problem with talent gaps, where senior AI researchers, people who are really developed today, are in shortage, and we don't have enough experienced faculty. I won't emphasize again on funding models, because they have indeed been addressed, that especially affecting PhD, postdoctoral research, and long-term research careers within AI. Perhaps what could be done is just strengthening our data governance, establishing legal frameworks that could improve cross-institutional data sharing that will then increase collaboration, and also linking university to industry and government. Investment in infrastructure, enabling Pan-African coordination, where we are building shared data commons that we can share, and then which can improve interoperability between our systems, so that we can share research and methodologies. I think those are some of the things that I wanted to say, and all I can say is, bottom line, Africa's AI future depends on coordinated investment across data, compute, institutions, and talent. And without this, progress will remain fragmented and externally dependent. But we do have an opportunity to build a very scalable, locally relevant AI systems if we do things right. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Audrey. I think you covered all the fragmented data systems, the funding model, and as well as research and methodologies that we have to use to make sure that we are having enough to learn. There are some concerns among those you cited that we need to take into account if we want to have something very fruitful from AI. I will move to the next panelist, Prof. Cheneye Anyedike. Where do you see the most significant disconnects between national strategy, institutional efforts, and community realities? And what would more inclusive, context-responsive AI governance look like?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Beautiful policies are developed at the top. Innovations are developed at the universities, which I'll say is the middle. But we all know that adoption happens at the bottom. You know, there is need for these layers to connect sufficiently. Like I said, what worked for us? Why did our system work? Because there was a connection between what I've just mentioned. To be able to move toward more inclusive and content-responsible AI governance, I would suggest that policy documents should be functional data systems. For example, I've already said what we did, generating localized disease data sets. Even as we are talking, the system is still picking the data and storing it. But is there a mechanism to integrate this? Then there is need for stronger community feedback loop. And that was what really helped us to be able to integrate these recommendations to be delivered through the SMS, which is actually helping the farmer. So that co-design, like I said, co-creation, the farmers or the end users being able to validate what is built is very, very important. Then the university is also very, very important. They should act as coordinators or connectors between policy and practice. So through field deployment, testing, and training, we can be able to translate innovation into real-world impacts. So, in conclusion, inclusive AI governance in Africa must be participatory. And I'm very happy that my fellow panelists have said that, they have agreed. Engaging the community is very, very important. It should be data-driven, grounded in real systems. Then it should also be implementation focused. It should just go beyond just the strategic documents. Thank you. I can't hear you. I don't know if it's from myself.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Adoption happens at the bottom. That's why community feedback matters. I think this is a very interesting point of view. And the university has to has to act like connectors between innovators, communities, and government. I think if we do so, as you said, we will be able to have some responsible AI and very interesting also co-development or co-creation of the product that will serve to everyone and won't harm them. Thank you again for your insight. We will finish the second round with Prof. Nizar, asking him, given what we've heard across these levels, what are the most persistent barriers to effective collaboration? And how can they realistically be navigated to ensure AI development is both innovative and socially responsible? Prof. Nizar, the floor is yours.
Thank you again. And I will try to be brief. And it's helping me in that the fact that the fellow panelists have already mentioned a lot of the points that I want to talk about here. So I'll try to summarize it into 4 different points very briefly based on what I heard. And the striking thing is the panelists coming from a different points of view, but they are all pointing to the same issues. So that's an important thing to note here. So the first point that was mentioned many times is fragmentation, right? There's a lot of effort that's happening across governments, academia, communities, but they are often in silos and there is a lack of communication or connection between those 2 things. So a simple solution for that, or a potential solution, is what we have addressed already in the first question, is the building ecosystem level partnerships. Not partnerships only between universities or partnerships between same type institutions, but partnerships at the ecosystem level that involves everyone, from the community to the donors to the researchers. And examples for that is to go toward AI centers or AI hubs where resources are shared. We have addressed the infrastructure issue, but again, we don't need to have a data center in every city or a data center in every country, right? So we can work with shared resources, shared infrastructure, even cross boundaries or cross countries. And that's a very efficient model. We can set joint research agendas between institutions, and that is very useful. And that can be done through joint programs, co-supervised students, and integration of training programs between the different institutions. And that's where we can still start seeing some of that fragmentation melt away a little bit and more connection between the different stakeholders. The second barrier, and I'm trying to go fast to make sure that I stay within the time. The second one is very important, is the misalignment of incentives. As researchers, the research output is the main thing, right? We're looking for papers, we're looking for publications, expenditure in research, which clearly misaligns with, for example, with the donors and the private sector. They are looking for short-term deliverables and return on investment. They want something that is fast, and there is a monetary return on investment. And also it conflicts a little bit with community focus that is on usability and access. It's different. And the governments, they focus more on the regulation and compliance piece. So the incentives are not aligned between the different stakeholders. And that's one of the big issues that is blocking a little bit the development. So one of this, again, the obvious solution would be to align the incentives, right? And this is driven by funding. So when funding is coming in, it has to have all the objectives, the academic publications, the policy recommendation, and also real world implementation. So when we're talking about grants or projects or co-designed agendas, they have to address all the incentives and all the objectives at the same time, and also have some shared metrics. For example, the number of papers is not enough, and it's not something that everyone cares about, but it should be there for the academic point of view. But also we should include the number of deployed solutions, the number of trained local practitioners, the number of involvement or outreach to communities, and also measurable community outcomes, which would be defined depending on the application and depending on the problem that we are addressing. But it's very important to align incentives, and we see it even at the bigger level, right? Between the private sector that's developing the AI technology, focusing on profit, and governments who are trying to regulate it. So there is a misalignment in incentives, and that has to be aligned with the participation of the communities and academia. And I think that's a very important barrier that needs to be addressed. The other one is, we already talked about it, is the short-term aspect of a lot of those engagements. Usually they're very small projects, 2-3 years, and then the outcomes are not fall within time. So as a solution for that is just not invest in projects, but more invest in institutions. And I think we talked about it a couple of times, and it was mentioned by the other panelists as well, is investing in infrastructure, investing in degree programs when we talk about universities, and of course, investing in talent, investing in faculty capacity, and so on. So it's things that would have a long-term impact. Rather than a small project, you go and implement a solution in one farm and then it's done and we move on. So that type of realigning investment would be very important as well. For example, we can talk about long-term fellowship models, if there are resources for that, where researchers from both sides, like African researchers, are embedded in global labs for extended periods for training and other things. And we have also global researchers embedded in African institutions and African universities. As an exchange fellowship program, long-term fellowship program would be very useful. That's where you can see real two-way capacity building and co-development. It's not just a one-way transfer of information, which links to the last barrier, which is the power imbalance, right? There's if we look at the investment in AI, even you just put the word map, you see there are two huge centers in China and in the US. And then even when you represent it in bubbles, it's really disconcerting. You see like very tiny things compared to the huge bubbles. So there is a big power imbalance. And the solution for that is we have to move from, I know we talk a lot about inclusion, but I don't think it's the right term to talk about it. It has to be co-leadership. If we're talking about anything that's going to happen in Africa, it has to be co-led, and it's not just an inclusion type of outreach that we typically talk about. There has to be ownership of the solutions, ownership of data, ownership of the infrastructure. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable and it's not going to be successful. And that is where we can address a little bit of that power imbalance in terms of development when it comes to AI. So again, those are the points that I can think of. I'm sure there are a few other things, but I tried to summarize what I heard from the panel.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice wrap up in terms of what we have to tackle or to face: fragmentation, misalignment, research with donor sector, private sector and government, short-term project, power imbalance. And you gave us a couple of ideas and solutions that we can maybe try to experience and to go further or beyond this barrier. So thank you again for your different insights, panelists. It's now time to hear from our audience. We know that we are like 9 minutes left, and I will ask Amy if she can help me to run this Q&A session. So
we
Amy?
only have a very, very short time because we also have some closing remarks in about 5 minutes. So I guess if we could choose maybe one question that could quickly be addressed by all panelists. I'm seeing Okay, I see a question from Isaac Columbo from Michigan State University in the Q&A. So Africans are known for innovativeness and improvisation. These are traits that lend themselves well in the AI world. How might we catalyze this African skill among grassroots folk so that they are not end users but co-creators in the development and use of AI? So if there's someone who wants to jump in on that question. Maybe Professor Anyadike, in terms of especially talking about the grassroots co-creation and tapping into skills that are and indigenous knowledge for Africans.
Thank you. I agree with you perfectly because for AI to really work in Africa is not really determined by how advanced the technology is, but how well it aligns with the reality of the people it is meant to serve. So co-creation is very, very important. That must be co-creation to be able to drive AI development in Africa. Thank you.
And I see one question also that could appeal to the whole panel. I think it would be good, Prof. Sar, to get everyone's take on a very basic question, but I mean a very essential question, but also a very straightforward from Prof. Coleman Soka from UDSM. Is Africa investing enough in AI? Who would like to take on that question? Prof. Ozar, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, the answer is no, because from what I had earlier presented, the tech companies had committed $100 million. But what Africa needs is 250 to 500 billion. And the trajectory that we are seeing not meeting the investment in R&D from the commitment the African Heads of State made in the 1980 Lagos Plan of Action, where we committed to invest 1% of our GDP to research and development. Up to now, over 4 decades, no African country has been able to invest up to this 1% of our GDP to R&D. That shows you that, of course, AI fall under science, technology, and innovation. And if this investment is not coming through, it means that we are not definitely investing enough. So we need to invest up to that 500 billion, and that could keep us at bar with our global North peers. Thank you. You're muted. You're muted.
Prof. Mazizana, you were unmuting. Did you have something to add to that about investment in AI?
No, not really. I mean, we've already talked about the lack of compute infrastructure. I believe in the support system. If the support system is there, then we have invested in then, as I suggested, let it be at national budget level, where we know that AI has to be incorporated at that level. Then maybe we'll say there's a bit of investment. So countries are still lagging behind in doing that. So I really would not think universities are that supported and other institutions that want to do R&D. Thank you.
Nizar? Prof. Lajna?
That is good. I think the two questions are connected, right? I don't think we lack talents or knowledge in Africa. So the first question by Isaac. So that part is not lacking. What is lacking is real investment which connects to the second question. And I believe in numbers, right? If I look in the US, we are putting about $405 billion in AI investment. In China, it's close to 300 billion in the last 2 years. In Africa, we're talking about like few millions. We're not even in the same order of magnitude, not even the same scale. And I don't think any single country has the capacity to invest. We have to look at it as a continent, not as single countries. I know that South Africa is a hub, Kenya is a hub, Nigeria is a hub, but by themselves, they cannot compete. There's no way that it can be at any comparable scale to US and China or Europe. Even within the EU, countries by themselves, they cannot compete. France has put only 300 million in investment, so which is in no way comparable to what is happening in other places. So it has to be a strategy between multiple countries. Otherwise, unified strategy. Otherwise, it will not be successful. So that's the only addition that I'll have to that.
Thank you all. Unfortunately, there's a lot of great questions which we will take note of. Prof. Sar, with your permission, I'm going to turn it over to our closing speaker. But we will take note of those questions that we have not had a chance to answer, and I think they will help us drive future conversations in this AI space. I want to thank all the panelists and Prof. Sar for your able moderation of this session. And now I will turn over to our closing speaker from ATPS, Engineer Professor Joel Nwakaire. He's a professor of agricultural and bioresources engineering at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and a senior research associate at ATPS, where he serves as program officer for AI in Agriculture and Food Systems Innovation Research Network. Hopefully, I've gotten that correct, Joel. And over to you.
Distinguished policymakers, esteemed researchers, dedicated civil society actors, private sector innovators, and our collaborative partners. Thank you all for being here. And to our panelists, thank you. It was wonderful hearing from you. Your words resound with us. Today, April 29, 2026, we have engaged in a profoundly critical conversation during this dialogue, which is co-hosted by the Alliance for African Partnership and the African Technology Policy Studies Network. Our focus has been clear: to ensure that AI governance in Africa does not remain an abstract concept, but translates into an enabling systems that shape infrastructure, data systems, human capacity, and institutional practice. As AI systems become deeply embedded in our healthcare, agriculture, education, public administration, we recognize and must recognize that true governance is not a top-down thing. It is an interconnected governance structure that must flow seamlessly from continental and national policies down through the ethical review boards of our universities and directly into the lived experiences of our local communities. However, translating these macro-level ambitions into reality requires us to anchor our policies and practices in non-negotiable pillars: responsible AI, also called ethical AI, gender equality, diversity, and inclusion. Our panelists define it as co-leadership, and a commitment to building ecosystems that are unapologetically African in their context. Hence, to operationalize this inclusive vision, I leave each of you with a targeted call to action. To our policymakers, national strategies are essential, but they are only the beginning. We urge you to move away from the top-down regulation and embrace the co-design of policies, bringing in the marginalized voices, local leaders, and must specially target AI capacity building, digital infrastructure, and governance enforcement so that Africa is not left dependent on external funding to dedicate or to detect its technological future. To the researchers and universities, you are the critical engines for AI development, talent cultivation, and ethical reflection. It is a calling. We rely on you to pioneer responsible AI practice in the lab. Crucially, this means leading the charge in the creation, curation, and protection of local data sets. We cannot build ethical sound AI if our systems are trained exclusively on foreign data. We need robust indigenous data sets that reflect the rich demographic comprising languages and realities of Africa. Now, to the civil society actors who may be listening, you are the guardians of community trust. We need you to continue advocating for gender equality and social inclusion, ensuring these technologies close the gender and digital divide rather than widen them. Hold governments and corporations accountable to genuine participatory processes. Ensure that when we speak of local relevance, we are not just talking about geography, but about protecting the rights, dignity, and economic well-being of our most vulnerable population. To the private sector and innovators, building cutting-edge technology is only half your mandate. Your innovations must be socially responsive. We challenge you to engage in the genuine co-design of tools. Do not build solutions for African communities, build them with African communities. Embedded diversity into your product development cycles and ensure your tools are transparent, equitable, and designed to solve real-world development priorities. Finally, we must recognize the ultimate catalyst for all these actions: partnership. No single sector, university, or government can navigate the complexities of AI governance alone. The cross-sectional interinstitutional collaboration we have witnessed today, championed by networks like AAP and ATPS, must become our standard operating procedure. We must pool our resources, share our data safely, and align our vision, bridging the gap between high-level policy and on-the-ground implementation in the defining challenge of our era. Let us take the insights shared today and commit to building an AI future for Africa that is structurally sound, adequately funded, radically inclusive, and undeniably responsible. Thank you, our moderator, Professor Idris, sir, our brilliant panelists, and to all of you for your active engagement. We look forward to the future joint initiatives and capacity building efforts that will grow from today's dialogue. We thank you and love you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was quite inspirational to take us forward. I love the call to action that you gave for everyone and all stakeholders in the system. So thank you so much. Justin, is there any last piece? Just to share that, to thank our panelists again, our closing speaker and our moderator. Recording of today's dialogue will be shared with all registrants. And to know that additional dialogues will be announced soon. So make sure you are following AAP on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and you can also find out more about AAP at the aapbridge.com, our networking platform. Thanks, everyone. I learned so much today, and I really appreciate all of you.